Hello, and welcome to the Leadership Masterclass, Creating Performing Teams. I am Dr. Nicole Price, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be here with you. Just wanted to let you know that this is scheduled to be approximately 20 minutes or so. But one thing that I know for sure is that when I'm talking to organizations, oftentimes people describe their challenges as one, trying to help people get along across difference, and that oftentimes people think about that in terms of race, gender, and sexual orientation. But people struggle to get along when I have accounting departments and people who are in operations. People often struggle to get along when I've got marketing departments who want to do all kinds of things, especially on social media. And then you have HR and your legal department saying, no, we can't do those things. You have the policy people at odds with the folks who are saying, hey, let's figure out how we can have more fun in the organization. Let's create a lot of different scenarios so that people can show up and be their best selves at work. You have all of these things in conjunction with right now, people are struggling with, do people work from home or do people work remotely? Do you hire people with the skill you need, or do you develop it inside? And if you decide you're going to hire people with the skills you need, people who work for your organization and want to switch across divisions, how do they do that? How do they get those skills? How do they develop in those areas? All of these talent challenges are going on inside organizations. And if you caught our What's Up Doc yesterday, you also know that people, in addition to having these struggles inside organizations, are having struggles outside of their organizations as well. So we have a major election here in the United States on Tuesday. What does it look like when people can't even come together around the work that they're going to do inside the organization? And then you also have these political challenges. Whenever all of these things happen, just know disengagement is what your employees feel. It feels like it's too much. They have their day-to-day tasks that they need to get done. And then now we have all of these people issues, process problems, and additional challenges that cause us problems. If you are not aware, about two-thirds of US employees are in this position, feeling like, look, I got to get a paycheck. Let me care a little less about this place in order to get my work done. Just let me put my head down and just do what I have to do, and everything else be damned. What's interesting about this group of people is that it is not the group of low performers necessarily. Low performers are actually quite committed to your organization, committed to getting their paycheck and not doing any work. The two-thirds, this group needs solid leadership to help them step up instead of step down. And when we think about who that somebody is who has to do something, I sit solidly in the position that is the leader who creates the climate inside our organization. As a consultant, we only do two things. One of those is to help teams make progress on issues and challenges that they face and a range of leadership issues. But also, we try to come in and provide some inspirational keynotes from time to time. But almost every time when I engage with a new client, one of the first things they ask me for is an assessment. Do you do assessments? I'm an engineer, so this might shock you. No. Here's why. If you've been in business for any length of time, it is highly likely that some other consultant has done an assessment. You have employee engagement survey results from the last time you asked your employees how things were. You likely have done some kind of pulse surveys. If not that, you've done exit interviews, or people have just told you. And and I believe that people already know how to be great. I believe organizations know the same. We know what the challenges are. And we have just sometimes not always, use that information or the information gathering stage as a way to not make progress, not to do anything, not to move forward. And so while I agree with assessments, not really in the business of conducting them because I find them to be just a way to be a little bit resistant. So when we get those survey results and we've seen what our clients have said in the past, I think that there's got to be a better way than assessing the people again. My primary question is, what did they tell you? What did the last consultant tell you the last time we were in this predicament? There's a process that I have called LEAD. I'm going to go over it in like 10 minutes here, and then I'm going to share some case studies. But if you have questions about anything, quite frankly, that you think I can help to answer, happy to help happy to answer them live on the call, or you can schedule some time to meet. And if I can solve your problem in a 60-second pick your brain session, I will. There's no charge for that. But what I do want to let you know is that I wrote a book called Spark the Heart. And the very first chapter of that book, if you can't see it, says why I might be the worst person to tell you about empathy. Empathy is critical to reaching the leadership goals that we have in place. And I just want you to know I am an operations person. I'm not an HR person. I don't even naturally have empathy in my top strengths. Strength Finders has those dozens of strengths. Empathy is in my bottom 10. When you look at my Myers Briggs, I make decisions based on logic and reason, not naturally by empathy and compassion. And while all of those things are still true, when we think about workplace culture, empathy is a critical component. But let's talk first about just being logical, which is absolutely in my wheelhouse. When I think about what people say, including leaders, when they are looking for someone to lead them, they say things like what you see here on the screen. I want someone who's honest, who's steady, who's trustworthy, who's humble, who when I need them, they are going to be selfless. They provide a balcony perspective, but they also know what things look like on the ground. They are proficient in their job. And quite frankly, they are appreciative. And you probably can't see this, but this one up here says empathy. They're empathetic. And so here's what I'd like to offer up, because yesterday, one of the things that came up in the What's Up doc was how do you manage what's going on in this political landscape when people have a wide range of experiences and policies they support? The leaders that we choose, even in government, should match the values that we have as individuals and the values that we have as an organization. And so when you look at what leaders you're choosing, what policy positions you take, are we looking at people who are proficient? Are we looking at people who are empathetic? Are we looking at people who are trustworthy in their actions, not because we are assigning it? And when leaders tell me that we need to be less empathetic, I like to point out that the leaders we appreciate to lead us tend to be empathetic. And so if we want people to be empathetic with us, we have to be empathetic with others. Empathy cannot sit on a bed of hypocrisy. We have to know what our values are. We have to use those values and align them to the mission and vision of the organization, and then make sure that our decisions match what we say. Otherwise, we are being hypocritical. We show up in inauthentic ways, and people don't trust it. The E in lead stands for empathetic. Now, here's what you should know. There are multiple types of empathy. I am not the authority on empathy, believe it or not. I think Dr. Jamil Zaki has some of the best work around empathy. But if you don't realize that there are multiple types of empathy, sometimes people are resistant to the idea, and they haven't even, then they don't really know exactly what empathy means. While there are multiple types of empathy, cognitive or mental empathy is the easiest one to teach. And it's the one that I want to talk about today. Cognitive empathy is purely understanding what another person thinks, feels, or believes. And wouldn't you say that it is true that if I understand, not agree, but understand what another person thinks, feels, and believes, that quality can go up, costs can go down, service can go up? I am better able to provide customer service in a way that people appreciate if I understand my customers. That is cognitive empathy, that understanding. Chris Voss, the author of the book Never Split the Difference, coined the term tactical empathy, and it is using the understanding of what others think, feel, and believe to get them to do what we want. I know that oftentimes people think of this as manipulation. This is evidence-based and proven because I did an entire TED talk called What a Pimp Taught Me About Empathy. And in that talk, one of the things that I shared was that lots of people understand what other people think, feel, and believe. Not everyone has good intentions. And I share the story of a pimp I lived across the street from. He understood the women who worked for him, and he understood their customers too. That's why he's been able to do it for decades. So what does that mean for us? Empathy probably should not be used as a tactic. We're probably right about that. And some of the world's most nefarious people are using empathy for bad. So, what would it look like if those of us who are more well meaning, who do have compassion and care and concern for the folks on our team, were using empathy in a tactical way? My question is very simple. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Yeah, maybe empathy shouldn't be used in a manipulative way because purely, I think what people are trying to say when they think of that is that empathy without compassion is harmful. It is. I would argue that the things that I saw that pimp do when I was a kid were very harmful to the people who worked for him. Now, when people mix up cognitive empathy and emotional empathy, what is happening is they're talking about the ability to feel what another person feels. There are people who think you can't teach this kind of empathy. That is actually not true. You can teach people to feel what other people feel. But I would argue that emotional empathy is the easiest for us to access. It's the reason why when you are crying and a 2-year old is in your presence, they will try to make you feel better. It's the reason why when you smile at a baby, they smile back. But emotional empathy, when we're talking about work, especially for those of you who are in the helping profession, think religion, think healthcare, think nonprofit, there's a lot of burnout when you have high levels of emotional empathy. And here's why. If every day I'm working in a prison system and I am experiencing the negative impacts of what prisoners are experiencing every day, at the end of the day, if I'm feeling those emotions, if I'm feeling scared, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling upset, if I'm feeling worried, if all day, eventually I get to a point where I'm tired and I need a break. And that's why I talk more about cognitive empathy and the ability to think and understand what other people feel. Because now I know that whatever's happening is not happening to me, and I can choose to be effective over choosing to be right. Am I 100% right that it is the morally right thing to feel other people's emotions? Maybe so. And I am more helpful and I'm able to access my mental energy far more frequently and far more effectively and far more often if I choose to lean into understanding rather than feeling. It is not that one is bad and the other is good. It is that you need to be able to access both. The A in lead stands for accountability. Now, I love to tell the story about fleas. And if you follow me for any length of time, you're probably tired of hearing this story. I'm not tired of telling it because I think it's important. If you were to put fleas in a glass, they'd all jump out. But if you put fleas in a glass and you put a lid on that glass, they'll jump up and hit their bodies against that lid until they realize it hurts. And then they'll start to jump just below the lid. When you have 100% compliance and those fleas are all jumping just below the lid, you can take that lid off and those fleas will never jump out of that glass. What does that mean? That means they have learned to be helpless. They have worked really hard in the past. They were unsuccessful. And so now they have adjusted their behavior to match the outcomes they used to get. Here's the thing, even if you break the glass, the fleas will not jump out of the shape of the glass. Here, learned helplessness is actually the opposite of personal accountability. But when people talk about the employees on their teams who have learned helplessness, they feel like they're describing an issue with the employee. And I'm suggesting that if people are not living up to their skill, talent, and ability, it is the leader's job to coach people from where they are to where they want to be. And only you can ask yourself, what kind of coach are you being every day? Or are you the type of person who's delegated, who's told, and who's dropped support? Another tactic that I like to use is to hold people accountable to what they say. What does that look like? Employee, what is it that you would like to accomplish here at work? What are your objectives? What are your best suggestions for how you can accomplish those things? And when they tell you those answers, now that's what you're holding them accountable to. I like to think about if I were interviewing for a job, I don't have any time to do that, but if I did interview for a job and an organization was describing a scenario in which I needed to be resilient, and they wanted me to give an example, I'd probably talk about this time when I grew up across the street from a pimp. And I have lots of examples in the interview about how I'm demonstrating resilience. The problem is when I actually need to be resilient inside an organization, sometimes I'm not. It is one thing to preach and tell people, yes, you need to do what you say what you gonna do, and when you can't communicate, and then not do that yourself. We have to demonstrate and show accountability ourselves as leaders, and then we can hold people accountable. But we can't ask for people to be accountable, and we aren't accountable to our role as coaches and developers. Empathy and accountability are allies, they are not enemies. These things work in tandem, not opposite each other. And so another critical component is coaching effectively. I'm a master coach for inside out development. I've developed my own coaching model called culturally responsive coaching. Anybody who wants the culturally responsive coaching methodology, you can read it in the book Dangerous Indifference. You can get it for free in our resources page on livelyparadox.com. Actually, any coaching model works if you use it. The challenge is leaders lean into giving advice instead of actually coaching and developing. And I could do an entire class on that if necessary. The D in lead is for decision making. When we embrace the idea that, yes, I told people once and they should get it. You're right, but how effective are you? We must know that just as we get distracted, our people get distracted too. And the research is very clear that the average employee gets distracted, going, this is sick and wrong, describing the problem, not working on the problem for an average of about 2 hours a day. And if you can't do that quick math, that's like 3 months a year. You could actually, if you were able to redirect that energy, allow your employees more time off, be more flexible for work from home, if we could help them to focus. What does that look like? Again, we only do two things. One of those is conducting our high performance workshops, which is helping teams to make progress on things that they want to do, but they have not been able to do. Think big, hairy, audacious goal. Not my term, but when I see people who have been talking about things that have been plaguing their organization for 10 to 15 years, and we're still talking about it, but we have not made progress on it, this is the thing. This is what you would use the high performance workshop for. It is purely a focusing tool. Again, if you want to know how to do it for yourself, I always give away my processes for free. They're trademarks, so it doesn't matter. And if you want me to lead your team through it, happy to do so. Here's our method that we use. Number one, we redirect energy away from the what's wrong towards the things that are important. We assume foundationally that people know what to do, they just don't always do what they know. We invite the leaders to show up in self-management. Manage, what does that look like? We ask people to talk about what are their best skills, but then what are the things they've been working on since they were 7, so that when they are together in the room, they are managing themselves in that way. And then again, the process that we use is trademark, but we give a 100% money back guarantee that at the end of the session, the one thing that you said you wanted to make progress on, you are able to make progress on it, or you get all of your money back. And so we get these inputs from multiple places, and then every once in a while, the outcome or the executable strategy that comes out requires some kind of leadership development training, and we facilitate those sessions. Again, two things. We do the high performance workshops, and then we do the training classes. So if you're interested, I'd love to share how I have used some of this information to help turn around organizations. And again, if you have questions, feel free to share them. I'm going to share 3 case studies for you. The first one is related to a nonprofit. They had a CEO who had left the organization after decades of making positive outcomes for the organization. The staff loved her, but after she left, the staff was pretty disjointed on even the mission of the organization. But the work that they were doing was incredibly challenging. And they didn't have a professional development strategy for anybody in the organization, let alone the leaders. And they needed to get their work done because their clients had some major needs and they crossed demographics. And here's what I mean. Some of their clients were in rural areas, some of their clients were in the city, but they all needed the product that they were putting out. And so what did it look like after our high performance workshop? 2 days with this team. We got 100% engagement by senior leaders. We developed a 3 to 5 year strategic plan for inclusion. Why does that matter? Because of the diversity they have within their organization and for the clients they supported, inclusion was a critical component. People needed to feel like they were coming to a place where they could belong and deliver on their mission. And to deliver on their mission well, they had to be able to be flexible so that everyone could appreciate and utilize the services they provided, excuse me. The professional development strategy was connected to this plan, and they were able to effectively engage the community. The second of the three case studies I want to share was a mid-sized company. This team had the exact same two issues. A smaller organization to begin with, there were only about 400 employees, but their traditional methods were proven to not work. They had stagnated in terms of finances, and they had lots of different legacy systems from a technology standpoint that were not working, and many mindsets among their leaders were not working. This group decided to spend about 5 days together instead of our required two. But at the end of the 2 days, even their board was 100% in support of what we were doing and requested some of the training that we had come up with that was critical to the leaders, again, to lead in a way that was logical, empathetic, accountable, and decisive. They developed a 3-year strategic plan. And we identified for this particular client that their gap in leadership performance was with their middle level team. And so we targeted that group and taught them how to lead from the middle. What does it look like to lead up and manage your senior executives, but also to coach and develop for the people who are on the front line every day? Today, they have $40 million worth of opportunities in front of them because of the innovative work that they've done. Last case study I want to share, and just wanted to also let you know that if you have specific questions, I'm open to taking them. The last case study is the school district that was on the East Coast. They had low attendance, which many school districts struggle with today. The staff was completely disengaged, not necessarily because they didn't love the children, but because the leadership was lacking. The test scores were awful. Parent involvement, I'm going to say low, but it was pretty much none. And teachers were trying to find a way to work somewhere else besides in this particular district. At the end of our high performance workshop, and by using the 7 strategies for high performance, this school district had a 20% increase in graduation rates, and this is in less than 4 years, a 93% decrease in disciplinary actions, and a 42% increase in attendance. And I know that many of my districts are currently struggling with attendance and buses and all kinds of problems right now. But what I need you to know is that the increase in math and ELA scores were not for students who are already easy to educate. And I'm doing air quotes over here. These are for children who people think are difficult to educate. Children for whom English is a second language. Children for whom poverty is a problem. Um, Children who maybe have some kind of special need. And these were the kind of results that we saw. Lively Paradox works with teams in 4 different growth stages. And I just want to kind of tell you what those are. Mostly the people we work with are folks who are in crisis mode. They have lots of urgent issues. Everything is important. And so therefore nothing is important, but there's no real way to focus on the things that are the most impactful and need to be done right now, as well as the strategic things. Most of our clients fall in this category 2. Category 3 probably represents our second largest demographic, and these are people who focus on urgent issues, and that gets in the way of the important things. And so it is important to know that when you have client facing situations, things are important to clients that are not necessarily important to you. And so, but how do you manage and balance what you care about versus what the client cares about? These 2 groups are the groups we work with the most. But we also work with folks who are in that strategic zone, um, always focused on the highly important things. What we tend to do there is those groups generally have annual town halls for their people, and they usually bring me in to do a keynote. It's not necessary that they need me to do professional development for their staff. They oftentimes group in that growth stage 1 already has their own internal leadership development group. And then group number 4, love to work with these people, but typically this group can never find the time to schedule a date for either professional development or for some motivational keynote for their people because they're distracted. It's not that we don't love working with them, but they're usually just distracted. We got a question from Katina. Was the 5% increase in ELA score over 4 years or 1? Katina was splitting the difference there, 2 years. 2 years, but some major scaffolding, and Dr. Ian Roberts was critically important to that work, using his methods that are outlined in the book Radical Empathy. Radical Empathy. So if you have managed to stay to the end, I just needed you to know what we've talked about. If you came in later, what I did was just kind of talk about the lead strategy and also shared what the problems are as it relates to organizations. And then I do have about 6 minutes. I lied to you and said I was going to have 10 minutes for you to ask whatever questions you want to ask. But if you need to drop, feel free to schedule some time to pick my brain. Again, if I can help you with your issue in the 60-minute call, I will absolutely do so at no charge for you. But if you're looking to make the major mindset shift with your leaders to shift the trajectory of your team, just know that Lively Paradox is incredibly positioned to recover the 2 hours a day that people waste on unimportant matters and redirect that towards things that are more productive and helpful. And happy to talk to you about that. Here's my primary team. We've got Jocelyn Shante, who is the development director and can get us connected if you don't want to go through the link or if you think there's more information I need to know about your organization before we meet. Jocelyn's happy to get you connected. Whenever we're working with a school district, the Olympic athlete transformational leader who is a national authority on school district high performance, Dr. Ian A. Roberts, generally joins me on those. But otherwise, I am the primary person who does the keynotes, and I'm also the primary person who does most of the professional development. We've got about 4 other consultants on staff who help with coaching and things of that nature. So I want to just leave you with an opportunity to, if you are a busy leader, you need to get out of here. I appreciate you. Let's start there. And if you need a systemic strategy to skill up the leaders on your team, go ahead and make that appointment. I'd love to talk to you. And it has been an absolute pleasure. Again, I'm doing this exact same webinar every other week so that if you know someone who needs to hear the things that I've just shared, that you can ask them to join. And also, every single one of our books is less than $20. And if you buy the books for your entire team and that number meets a certain threshold, Jocelyn is willing to work with you for me to make an appearance for your book signing and questionnaires. Now, some of you work on Saturdays and Sundays. I do not. There are some exceptions to that rule, but in general, I don't. It looks like I don't have any questions today, but I wanted to give you the number to the office, my personal email address, and also let you know where you can find additional resources about me or my work. And that's at drnicoleprice.com. And again, would love to work with you if you think it makes the most sense. Have a fantastic day.